A Roman soldier was safest from the enemy at the exact moment he was most likely to die. To see why, you have to spend a night inside the camp. It's past midnight, deep in enemy territory. You're in a leather tent with 7 other men, close enough to feel them breathe. Outside, a wall of earth, a ditch lined with stakes, sentries walking the rampart in shifts, watchwords passed hand to hand in the dark. You are sleeping inside the most carefully engineered camp the ancient world ever produced. No enemy is getting through that wall tonight. And yet, by the time the trumpet sounds at dawn, one of the men in this camp will be dead. Not from an enemy sword. Here's the strange part. For all the genius of the Roman camp, the ditch, the rampart, the watch rotation, the thing that killed Roman soldiers at night was almost never the enemy outside. It was something already inside the walls with them. So, 2 questions. What was actually killing them in the dark? And the part that makes no sense at first. Why did the safer a Roman camp was on the outside, the more dangerous it became on the inside? By the end of this, you'll know every way the night could take you, from the slowest death to the one sleeping right beside you. To understand what killed them, you first have to understand how a Roman army slept, because they didn't just lie down and hope. Every night on campaign, the army built a fortress from nothing, a ditch dug around the whole position, the earth thrown up into a rampart, sharpened stakes along the top. Inside, the same grid every single time, the same roads, the same tent positions, so a man could find his place in total darkness. The smallest unit was 8 men who shared one tent, the contubernium. They marched together, ate together, slept together. The 8 men breathing around you in the dark were the people you trusted with your life. Remember that. It matters later. All of it was built to keep an enemy out. But a wall that keeps an enemy out also keeps everything else in. The cold, the sickness, the thousands of armed, frightened men packed into the dark with you. The Roman camp was a machine for surviving the night, and a machine for concentrating everything the night could do to you. Let's start with the slowest way to die. Morning roll call in a winter camp. The names are called. And some of the men don't answer. They're still in their tents. They never woke up. Cold was the most patient killer in the Roman world. It didn't need a battle. It just needed a night. During the long sieges at Numancia in the mountains of Spain, Republican armies wintered in cramped camps and bled men to cold and disease until some units simply couldn't continue. We don't have the numbers. No one wrote down how many didn't wake up. We only know it was enough to break the siege. A century later, Mark Antony retreated through the Armenian highlands in winter in 36 BC. Plutarch and Cassius Dio both blame the snow and the ice directly. Men dying of cold and exhaustion in camp, not in combat. The losses ran into the tens of thousands, and the ancient writers point at the weather, not the enemy. But the most haunting cold death the Romans recorded wasn't an accident of weather. It was deliberate. According to tradition, recorded by Basil of Caesarea in the 4th century, 40 soldiers of the 12th Legion refused to renounce their Christian faith. So they were stripped naked and forced to stand on a frozen lake through the night. On the shore, a warm bath was left steaming in plain sight. Anyone who wanted to live only had to walk to it and recant. One man broke. He ran for the bath, and the shock of the heat killed him on the spot. The rest stayed on the ice and froze, together through the dark. That's the cold. It's slow, it's quiet, and at least you can see it coming. The next thing couldn't be seen at all. Cold at least announces itself. You feel it in your hands, your feet, your face. Disease gave no warning. And the very thing that kept men warm at night, bodies packed close together in sealed tents, was the perfect way to spread it. In the winter of 168 to 169 AD, an epidemic tore through the army's winter quarters at Aquileia. It was serious enough that the emperors Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus summoned the most famous physician alive, Galen, to deal with it. He couldn't. The disease, something like smallpox, moved through the close-packed camps faster than anyone could understand. Cassius Dio later wrote that the army was reduced almost to nothing. Across the empire, this plague would eventually kill millions. Picture it from inside one tent. 8 men sleeping close for warmth, the way they always had. The man beside you is hot to the touch, shaking in his sleep. By the time you notice, you've been breathing his air for 6 nights, and there is nothing. No rampart, no watch, no rotation of the guard that keeps the thing moving between you and the dark. Cold and plague have one thing in common, though. They don't want anything. They're just nature, indifferent. The next way to die required someone to want you dead. Around 65 BC, soldiers from Pompey's army were marching through the forested mountains of Pontus, near the Black Sea. And along the road, they found honey. Bowls of it, just sitting there, left out, free. So they ate it. What they didn't know is that the honey in that region came from rhododendron nectar. It carries a toxin. We now call it granotoxin, confirmed by modern toxicology. In small amounts, it makes you sick. In the amount a hungry soldier would scoop straight out of a bowl, it brings dizziness, vomiting, confusion. The world tilts. Your legs stop working. You lie down because you cannot do anything else. And that's when the people who left the honey came out of the trees. The mountain tribes had set the bowls deliberately. They waited for the toxin to do the work, and then they walked in among men who couldn't lift a sword. Strabo, who recorded it, says 3 maniples were, in his words, easily disposed of. 3 maniples, around 360 men, poisoned by a meal they were glad to find, killed while they lay helpless on the ground. It sounds like a legend. The toxicology says it isn't. But even this was still an enemy, an outside enemy, however clever. The worst thing in the Roman night wasn't outside the wall at all. It was the army itself. So far, everything that killed you came from outside, or from nature. Now the camp turns on its own. There was one thing a Roman soldier could do at night that guaranteed his death. Not desert, not mutiny, just fall asleep. On watch. The man on guard held every life in the camp in his hands. If he slept, the wall meant nothing. So the punishment was built to match the crime. Polybius describes it. The soldier who fell asleep on watch was put on trial, and a tribune would touch him, lightly, with a staff. That touch was the signal. Then the man's own comrades, the same men he protected, the men he ate and slept beside, beat him to death with clubs and stones. The people in his own tent struck the first blows. The logic was cold and consistent. A sleeping sentry risked everyone, so everyone carried out the sentence. Survival was technically possible. It was not expected. And if a whole unit failed, there was decimation. 1 man in 10 killed by the others, and the survivors could be sent to sleep outside the rampart, stripped of the wall's protection, left in the dark with whatever was out there. But the system, at least, killed you for a reason, by the rules. The last way to die came with no rules at all, and no warning. The most dangerous thing in a Roman camp at night was the other Romans. Go back to that tent. 8 men close enough to touch. On a normal night, they're your safety. On the wrong night, they're the threat. In 14 AD, after the death of Augustus, the legions on the Rhine broke into open mutiny, and the violence happened where the men slept. Soldiers dragged their own centurions out of their beds in the dark. They flogged them. Tacitus says 60 lashes each, one for every centurion in the legion, and threw some of them, half dead, over the rampart into the Rhine. The wall that kept the enemy out. They used it to dump their own officers into the river. And then it turned again. When the mutiny was finally put down, the loyal troops went tent to tent at night and killed the ringleaders where they lay. Tacitus is clear about the chaos. In the dark, some innocent men died too. No one could tell, by torchlight, exactly who was guilty. It wasn't only common soldiers. In 69 AD, during the Batavian Revolt, soldiers, drunk and rioting in the night, dragged their own commander, the legate Hordionius Flaccus, out of his bed and murdered him in his own quarters. The highest-ranking man in the camp, killed by his own side in the place he slept. So here's the answer to the question from the beginning. Why did the safer a camp was outside, the more dangerous it got inside? Because the wall did exactly what it was built to do. It sealed the camp. It locked thousands of armed, exhausted, frightened, sometimes drunk men into one small space for the whole night, with no way out. The rampart that kept the enemy out kept all of that in. The better the cage held against the world, the more completely it held you in with everyone else. So count the ways the night killed a Roman soldier in his own camp. The cold took him in his sleep. Disease moved through the tent he shared for warmth. Poison was waiting in a free meal. The army beat him to death for closing his eyes on watch, and his own comrades came for him in the dark by torchlight, and sometimes got the wrong man. Notice what's missing from that list. The enemy. Make no mistake, the battlefield was still where Romans died in their thousands. Nothing about a night in camp compares to the slaughter of a lost battle. But that's exactly the point. The daylight battlefield was the one danger the Roman system was built for. The wall, the discipline, the formation, the watch. All of it pointed outward at the enemy. And at night, that was the one threat that mostly went away. When the Germans came for Germanicus's camp in the dark, they found the rampart manned and withdrew without throwing a single spear. The wall worked. The enemy outside was the one danger a Roman soldier barely had to fear, because he was the only threat the whole machine was built to stop. What it couldn't wall out was everything else. The cold, the sickness in the shared tent, the poison in the ration, the discipline that turned comrades into executioners, the mutiny 3 tents down. That's why Roman commanders were obsessed with the night. They posted the watch against the enemy. But they knew the wall faced the wrong way for most of what could kill a sleeping army. And these are only the nights that someone wrote down. The mutinies famous enough for Tacitus, the plague that reached the emperors. How many other men simply didn't answer the morning roll call in camps no historian ever named? No one knows.